It's never hitting. It's whispers. It's the sudden silence when you walk in a room. It's the fake smiles and then realizing you've been dropped from the group chat and the really bad vibe you feel that tells you that you're not welcome. Here's the truth no one names. Female bullying. It hides in kindness at first, and then it can turn vicious. If you've ever been targeted with a smear campaign by other women, then you probably noticed, like I did, that it has this weird property that makes no sense. You may never know why a group of women have turned against you, but they can do real damage. In this video, I want to talk about what female bullying looks like, how it happens, what it feels like, and what you can do about it. And I'm going to start by telling you what happened to me. So when my first child was about to be born, his dad and I rented a house at the edge of town on this long cul-de-sac, like half a mile long. And it was near wild land and forest. And as luck would have it, out of 20 or 30 households on this cul-de-sac, 5 of them were about to have their first child, like in the same few months. So I was invited to join a mom's group. And I was happy to be invited. I felt really isolated out there, and I hoped that I would be making new friends and, mom friends. It's like what you're supposed to do. And at first, things were fine. My kid's dad and I got married and had a second kid and still tried to stay involved in the neighborhood. And it was a little awkward, though, because this group loved to drink. And I mean, some of them drank a lot. And any kind of evening gathering, and most of them would just be absolutely shit-faced. And my son's dad was and is a longtime sober alcoholic, so he didn't drink. And out of respect for him, and because I was a mom of young children, I didn't drink either. And if you're a non-drinker, you can get very left out at a party when the wavelength is all about drinking and the people are getting drunk and sloppy. And I think there was a cultural difference there too. They were kind of hippie types who wore babies in slings all the time. And I wasn't in a position to do that because we depended on me working so that we could pay the rent. And so sadly, I couldn't stay home as much as I would have liked. I didn't know why the moms eventually turned on me, but something shifted. It started small, little stuff, people exchanging weird looks when I hung out in the group, then an email thread that I wasn't included on, then I mentioned it, but then they did it again. And there was a rude joke about me. I can't remember what it was, but I felt like I couldn't say anything or they'd accuse me of acting too sensitive. So I ignored it. I acted like, oh yeah, that's funny, haha. And there was a neighborhood potluck with the whole neighborhood where strangely no one would talk to me. And I didn't like it. I asked a couple of people what was going on and everybody ignored my question. And so I left. And then at Halloween, while my little son and I, he was all dressed up in a superhero costume, we were waiting for everyone to gather at our end of the block so we could join the group and go trick-or-treating together. We were all going to do it before it got dark. Well, then it did get dark and they didn't come. Nobody came, no trick-or-treaters, because basically the kids we were getting together with were all the kids within walking distance. So our bowl of candy just sat there by the door. The pumpkin was carved. There was a candle in it. There was nobody to see it. And I got this sick feeling about the whole thing. And I was calling them and no one answered. So I took my son out in this dark road to go knock on a few doors at least. And we rounded a curve. And there they all were, the moms and the dads and the kids, everybody but us, having a party at one of the houses. And they were done trick-or-treating. And I asked what happened, and they said, oh, we must have forgotten to tell you the plan, but the fact that they never even came down to our end of the street, that took effort. And they did this on purpose. It was obvious. And of course, my son wanted to stay and play with the other kids at that party. And I felt like I couldn't drag him out of there. It was this really awkward situation. So I had to sit there for a little bit, like a decent interval, with nobody talking to me and pretend like this wasn't happening. And I tell you, I couldn't wait to get out of there. It didn't just hurt me. I didn't know what to do. So I got home, I got my kid to bed, and I did my daily practice. And it did its work on me, and my mind got clear about what I was going to do about it. And, the daily practice, by the way, is is the method I've used for over 30 years to re-regulate my nervous system, clear my mind, get in touch with my intuition and insight. It's a couple of techniques. They're very easy. I teach them to everybody in the world for free. If you want to learn it, there will be a link down below in the second link, the daily practice. You can always get it there. So the next day, I went and knocked on the door to the mom whose kid was my son's favorite friend, thinking she would tell me what's going on. They went to the same preschool, and we used to carpool together to share the job of getting the kids there. And I was really angry and hurt, and I asked her why that had happened last night. And I found out it was her who started it, the smear campaign, and I found out why she did it. The whole thing began about a month before when I had to tell her family, I told her husband, I can't carpool your kid anymore because my car only holds 2 car seats in the back. And now with the new baby, I got 2 kids, so I can't do your kid too. So he said on this one day, he goes, well, this is a total emergency. I need to get him to school. Our car is broken. Could you just help me out today? And I was like, yeah, but I would have to put him in the front seat, which is legal, or was then in any case. It was legal to put a kid in the front seat. They were 3 or 4 years old. It was advised not to. You put the front seat as far back as it goes, So I drove their kid to school, and I drove carefully. I wasn't too freaked out about it. And that was all there was to it. I dropped the kids off at school. So then gradually after that is when I started realizing there was this smear campaign against me. So evidently the mom heard about this and was enraged. And I don't know what her husband told her, but it couldn't have been the truth about the situation where he really asked me to do it and I was reluctant. But in her mind, I had done this terrible thing. I had endangered her kid, and I should have known better. I should not have done it. And so she told everyone in the neighborhood that I was a dangerous person and should not be trusted around children. That is such a serious thing to say about somebody. And it was just totally a lie. So I told her what had happened and that I had not volunteered to do that, but her husband really needed it and asked me, and reluctantly I agreed. And the school was like a mile away on a quiet road, and it was legal. And she said, well, I don't care. You nearly killed my child. And she said that she couldn't even look at me ever again, that what I had done was so terrible. And she was like shaking when she told me. It just made no sense. And I feel like this was some issue between her and her husband. I was not involved in that. I don't know what that was about, but that was it. She recruited every mom on the block and the other neighbors to shun me and not speak to me. And we were never included in neighborhood activity again. And then around that time, my marriage fell apart. So my kid's dad, he moved out. I became a single mom. I was handling all this stuff by myself. And I found out that that's probably a trigger sometimes for people to kind of turn against a single woman, maybe. And then more problems happened, and I had a surgery that I needed, and something went wrong, and it led to 4 years of medical complications. I ended up with 14 major surgeries, 44 trips to the emergency room. I had these constant problems in and out of the hospital. And, my kid's dad would take over when I had to go to the hospital. But in the middle of the night, it wasn't always possible. I was always in this really difficult situation. And none of those neighbors did anything. One of them once made a dinner for me years later, 4 years into it, made a dinner for me. And I talked to them about this, but they were just like holding firm. No, you were a terrible person. You drove that kid. I don't know. It was hopeless, and it went on for a long time. And what happened was 2008, and the housing market collapsed, and my house lost 75% of its value. I was just hanging on, paying the mortgage, and then I couldn't sell it because it was worth less than I owed by a good chunk. And it was 10 years all in all that I lived there on that awful street before we could finally move away from those people. And I want you to know that thanks to the daily practice, I was still able to make this period of my life a time of great personal growth. So much of what I teach now, I learned then about re-regulating my nervous system, learning to have better relationships, stopping having negative relationships with men. But one thing I developed then was a set of actions I could take when I was feeling down and depressed that would lift up my spirit. And it's so important, right? So it was 10 years that I lived on that street subject to this female bullying campaign that was just so unfair.